Hey everybody, Scott Wikle. You're listening to My Kind of Country right here on Fish Creek Radio. One of the greatest, most distinctive voices in country music was Mr. Ferlin Husky. He had the ability to croon with the best of them with songs like Wings of a Dove, Fallen Star, and Gone, and then turn around and bring humor to country music as Simon Crumb, and I know many of you remember that. And Simon said it best, country music is here to stay, and that's for sure. You can listen to my show and you can hear the living proof. We have a very lovely lady with us today who knew Ferlin so very well, and they were together performing and in marriage and lifelong friends for well over 40 years. And I'm very happy to have her on the show today. Would you please welcome Marvis Husky to My Kind of Country? Marvis, hello.
Hello, Scott. It's good to hear you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, anytime.
Well, before we get talking about Ferlin, I'd like to talk about your career a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started in your professional career in country music?
Well, I worked. Well, I've been in music business. I mean, for 3 years old. My brother and I in Minneapolis sang on the radio show, the Slim Jim show, and then we worked local bands and stuff, and then they hired me at the Flame Cafe in Minneapolis, which was a theatrical for only Opry stars show. We'd get the stars in for a whole week, and all Opry stars, and then I'd been working there for quite a while, and Ferlin came in, and he hired my brother and I because the couple that was working with him just decided that they were going to quit, and so it was a scary thing because, we knew all his songs because we did them, but
Sure.
it was kind of scary in a way. And the first thing we did after he hired us was the Les Crane show in New York City. And I don't know, a lot of people don't remember that or anything like that, but I'll tell you what, I got doused real quick. That was a network show on it, so it was, well, anyway, that's about me. And then we worked together for 3 years. He hired my brother and I. We worked together for 3 years, and he got custody of his 4 children, and we took them with us on the road. And this is how he proposed, if anybody's interested. First of all, he said, but because we were carrying the 4 kids on the road, he says, one time, he says, I need a mom for my kids. And I said, yes, you do, because there was a lot of, on me. And then he said, will you marry me? Well, I was working for the man, and I was stunned. And then he said, in the same breath, almost, oh, by the way, I love you.
Well, that's good.
But leave it to Ferlin,
Well, at least he didn't ask you in the Simon Crumb voice, right?
No. But a funny story that happened on we were doing Ralph Emery's show and on WSM, and Ferlin was Simon and Ferlin on the radio. Of course, people, it wasn't TV so much then; it was more radio, and we played. Of course, Ralph Emery couldn't tell which was which either. He'd get frustrated. And anyway, so when we were working, we did the show, and of course it was taped, and funny stuff they outtook. They took a lot of it out of there. But anyway, we went to Michigan to work a date up there, and a lady come up to me and she said, I'd be ashamed if I were you. Well, I didn't know the lady from Adam's House Cats. I didn't know who she was. And so I said, what have I done? And she says, you're a bigamist. I said, what? You mean? I said, it just blew me away. And she says, you're married to 2 men. That one that talks weird and the other one, Ferlin Husky.
That's great.
And I said, wait a minute, that's the same person. Well, she wouldn't. until the show was over, she still walked around backstage snubbing me all the way through the show.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it.
That's kind of a weird thing that happened. So I got, but Simon was a great babysitter.
Well, how did he come up with that whole persona?
Well, when he was in the Merchant Marines, when they'd have those, blackouts or all those things that they had in the Marines and stuff like that, all the guys would want to hear him tell Simon Crump stories. Well, they were about this old boy that lived back in Missouri, and that would get them through the drill and all that stuff, because everybody was scared, of course, when they were bombing them, and they didn't have no ammunition. Mm-hmm. And when he started on the road, he decided that would be a funny voice, so he did. But he knocked that's the story the way he tells it. He knocked the P off of it and put an M on it and called it Simon Crumb instead of Simon Crump. And anyway, that's how it started, and it was like he went by so many different names, like it was Tex Terry, Terry Preston, 4 different names he recorded under. Mm-hmm. And so it was really kind of a way back war story, if you want to put it that way. And that's how Simon did it. Of course, Simon he was a different person when he did Simon. And he was a different person on stage when he was doing Ferlin, because he had that white suit on, and it was just like a whole different entertainer.
Yeah.
He was an entertainer's entertainer is what he was.
Absolutely. I read a quote from Merle Haggard. He said that, he was, Ferlin Husky was the consummate entertainer. He said there was nobody better that could entertain on a stage than Ferlin Husky.
Yeah, it's just been a rough couple of days here for me, because I just can't imagine him gone, Merle Haggard. I can't imagine Merle gone, but the 4 of us, Bonnie and Merle and Ferlin, Ferlin and Merle were good friends, but Bonnie and I were real good friends, and so we would have the buses, and then we'd send the buses, and we'd rent a car and go from day. So the 4 of us could be together on the road, and we had the best times. I mean, we really had some wonderful times, and I missed Bonnie when she died, and but Merle he always loved Ferlin, and he'd always loved Simon. He'd imitate him all the time. So the music business has lost a real big legend.
They sure have. And Miss Bonnie was a wonderful lady, too. I was privileged to know her as well. And you don't come across a sweeter, more genuine person than Bonnie Owens was, without a doubt.
No. At one time, we were going to record an album, the 3 of us wives, Jen Howard and Bonnie and I. We were going to call it Haggard, Howard, and Husky.
I love
that would have been a neat thing, but we never followed through.
Oh, man, that would have been great. I would have loved to have heard that.
Yeah, because we all sung, of course. And
there's a line, George Jones and Tammy Wynette did a song called We're Not the Jet Set, and there's a line in there that says, our Bach and Tchaikovsky is Haggard and Husky.
That was a neat song. Boy, we perked up on the road when that come on. Boy, that was a nice compliment.
Well, tell me a little more about Ferlin as kind of behind the scenes. What was he really like off stage?
Well, I never saw that man, and I worked with him all the time, except when I was in the hospital having a baby. And we had 4 together. We raised the other 4, and then we had 4 together. And but I was on the road right up until the end. But we never saw the same show twice. That man would play off of the weirdest little things in the audience. I mean, he'd always say, "Well, I've got the mic. I'm the boss," and he would play off some of the weirdest things. He's improv. What do you call that? Improv.
Yeah, he could do improv.
Yes, exactly. And he was so quick, and Simon made him quicker. But I never saw, like I said, I never saw the same show twice.
Wow, that's great.
It was amazing.
Well, how was he off stage? What was he like?
He was a very good husband and a very good father. He was a totally different man off stage. He was, well, I want to say he was still a character, of course, but when he got on that stage, put that white suit on with that ruffled shirt, it was just like you didn't even know that. I, as a wife, didn't even know him because he was just he was an entertainer, and that's all he stuck to. And he was, so. But at home, I mean, we had the best times of all the things we did. We did everything together. Of course, we had to
Sure.
when we were together so much. But he was he was a kind man, very sincere. And if there was an audience that wanted his autograph, he'd stay till the end and sign them all.
That's wonderful.
And so, I mean, we did a lot of duets and stuff. And I guess I'm on I don't know how many albums. I always arranged the background voices and all that stuff on the road. I mean, because we didn't always, when we didn't carry a band, it was all on my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow.
It was a little bit, but I did my job. He said he was proud of me.
What was Patsy Cline like?
Patsy was so much fun. That laugh, and Julie, her daughter, is the sweetest thing. She's got her mom's laugh. And we worked road shows with them, her and Charlie, and Ferlin and Charlie were best friends, of course, and they, when Kmart first opened, we were doing I think it was a Mother's Day show at one of those big theaters, Shriners theaters, and she wanted to go. Well, she wanted Charlie to go too, and she was telling Ferlin and Charlie, we got to go, and I says, we got to go see that place. Well, they had more fun backstage and on the bus, so so we went to Kmart, and when it first opened, and she filled up, I don't know how many baskets of sunsuits for Julie and Randy, and I mean, I was ashamed to go out of there. I'd never seen a store like that either, and and brought them back, and Charlie says, I need $5, and she says, well, what do you want? I gave you $5 this morning. And she bought me my first meal in a hotel with room service. I'd never been in a hotel with room service before.
Wow.
And she ordered spaghetti and meatballs, which I'll never forget. She was just, and I would try to sing her songs, and for the longest time I couldn't. It just broke my heart. I didn't,
Yeah, we certainly
But anyway,
lost her.
she was a beautiful lady.
We certainly lost her before her time, that's for sure. Well, how long did you continue touring with Ferlin? When did you leave the touring with him, and then when did you guys separate?
Well, we retired. We bought a home on a private lake in Florida. Now, you can cut this out if you want to. But to me, Florida's for newlyweds and newlyweds and nearly deads is what I say. I just go down there for a few weeks, but to live there when you got an alligator sitting up on your lawn in your flower bed, that just I didn't like that so well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So anyway. But that was right after Boxcar died, Boxcar Willie, because he was working in Branson for a good while, and that was supposed to be our retirement home. Well, listen, that Ferlin couldn't retire. He just couldn't do it. I mean, and that's when Leona got a hold of him and said, "Now listen, Ferlin, you need to get out," and everything. I had come back home because the fact that that I wanted to be with my kids and grandkids, and you know, and he wouldn't. No, that was his lake, and that was what he turned into a hermit. And even the neighbors, I mean, the kids didn't even know if he went out of town where he went. I think he had a nervous breakdown, but, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but he just could not be out of the music business. And thank God for Leona. She got a hold of him, and they did records and stuff like that, so, and worked road dates, so I appreciated that. But when he got so he couldn't anymore, you know, he was, well, he couldn't breathe because he was on oxygen, and so it was, I don't know, it was just really hard for him to do because he just wasn't a retiring person. He couldn't retire.
Well, he had some pretty...
He even sang with that oxygen thing on him.
I was going to say, he had some pretty serious health issues. I know he had some heart issues and things like that in later years.
Oh, right? Yeah. He had, well, when our kids were little, I think Jennifer was 2 or something like that, he had a heart attack in Minneapolis, and he had open heart surgery, and then they had to go and open him again, and because he had bleeders and all that stuff, and they said they lost him a couple, and you know, oh man, I was just sick because, and then he had another one when he was in Branson, and then he had another open heart surgery or stents and stuff, so he had a lot of issues with his heart, and you know, so he just really couldn't breathe good, so they put him on oxygen, but he had congestive heart failure. Mm-hmm. And the night our children sang him to sleep, which is, you know, it was a night, I mean, it was 2:30 in the afternoon. He said he was going to die at 2:30. And the kids sang in harmony, and it was at 2:30 he was gone.
Wow.
You know, but the night before, when I was there by his bed, he said, I said, I've got to go, and he says, well, I'm going with you. You ain't going nowhere. And he got out of the bed, and we had to drag him in there to put him back in the bed. And I mean, everybody was so tired. You know, we'd all set up with him all that time, and he had a lot of health issues, and it just wore me out. I mean, I was a mess after that, but I'm getting a lot better, and but God gave him to us. He was with us for 85 years, so right. I can't say that we could be disappointed at all. And it was 5 years ago, March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. He wanted to be sure it was. I don't know if that's really the case or what, but it sure shocked me. And now with Merle saying the same thing, golly, you know.
Yeah, it really takes you back a little bit. What was Ferlin's reaction when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame?
Oh, he deserved to go in there a lot earlier, I thought.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of them that ought to be in there that aren't yet.
Yeah, he was in awe. He really, and of course, you know, they need to put one more in there instead of just a few they put in there, but that's not my business. That's theirs. And but anyway, he was so appreciative of all that, and when we were having Christmas and stuff, and you know, that following year in December, you know, he was really going downhill then, you know, and you could tell. I mean, of course, you don't notice it if you're with him all the time. You know how bad people get, but right. People that hadn't been around him for a while, they said, "Oh my gosh," you know. And but he was. I'm just so proud and happy because he kept saying, "Well, I hope they get me in there before I die."
Well, you know, it was so well deserved, and it was so nice that he did so many of the Country's Family reunion shows too. Those to me are you know, they're archival shows that, you know, people can go back and listen to their music, listen to their stories, and there's so many of those great ones that are no longer with us, and I think it's wonderful that those shows are there for people to see. I certainly wish they would get in a bigger market with them. I mean, you know, because that's interesting to all of us folks who are Oh, yeah.
Staying home and all, that's interesting to everybody, and to be able to see them. I mean, everybody else, you don't expect them to stay young forever. It makes you feel better, to see them doing so well when they're on that show.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's great. I love that.
Tell me some of the songs that were very special to Ferlin that he had recorded over the years, and maybe some that were special to you too.
Well, of course, with Wings, of course, Wings of a Dove, and Since You Gone. Those were two because they were good songs, and also he would always say that he liked songs with one-word titles. And in the studio, he had an album called Once. He liked that, and then he recorded an album, and I was on it. He says, "This one's for you, Marvis. This is your album, and it's called Just for You," which is a great album. And he also had a special feeling for Freckles and Pollywog Days. That was Dallas Frazier's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Dallas, every time we'd go in the studio, I'd do all the typing of the songs and everything, to give the voices and everybody, and then do the voices with the Jordanaires and stuff and whoever was on there. And anyway, when Dallas, because we published a lot of Dallas's songs, and when Dallas was on there, he was also a great friend. Of course, Ferlin raised him, and with Dallas, he was like a son. Dallas was like a son to Ferlin, and Dallas was so good to Ferlin, and repaying him back. But I'd type all the songs out and have them all ready. Well, when they and our men would say, "Well, what's next?" and if nobody had any ideas, I'd say, "Oh, here's some." I'd put all Dallas's songs on top.
Oh, that's great. Dallas Frazier was a tremendous songwriter. In fact, George Jones recorded an entire album of Dallas Frazier songs.
Right. Yeah, Dallas has been a trooper. He's a great friend. Him and Sharon both are just lovely people, and we go back a long ways. Like I said, I wasn't even married to Ferlin for the 3 years I worked for him, so that's when I met Dallas. And I met Ferlin the first time when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And you talking about, you mentioned something about Jimmy Covart and all that stuff. That, in fact, Jimmy Covart and I were engaged also. And then I said, this ain't going to work. And then I dated a baseball player for the Minnesota Twins. And of course, he said, you can't sing you got to quit when we get married. I said, well, that's too bad then. Bye. And then, and Ferlin had hired us, and so I don't know, I don't know where I've lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay. Who were some of Ferlin's biggest musical influences? I mean, we talked about Merle Haggard, but who were some of the other ones that were big influences on him?
Oh, well, Lefty Frizzell. I mean, Merle Haggard did. Lefty Frizzell was great, but Ferlin really had. Gene Autry was a great influence on him. In fact, it was Gene Autry, our son Terry Preston, named our son Terry Preston because Ferlin wanted to call our son Mason Dixon, and I said, "Oh, that sounds like a jar lid. I don't know." Well, we were having lunch in Hollywood when we were doing a movie out there, and Gene and us, we were just the four of us. I can't think of his name. Anyway, he worked with him a lot. Anyway, Gene was sitting there, and I was very pregnant. In fact, Gene Autry got me my first wig I ever wore.
No kidding.
But anyway, I was very pregnant, and Gene asked Ferlin, he says, well, what are you going to name it? Because we knew it was a boy. And he says, I'm going to call it Mason Dixon. And Gene looked at me, and I rolled. I guess I must have rolled my eyes or something, because he said, he looked at me kind of funny, and he says, why don't you call him one of your old recording names like Tex Terry or Terry Preston or, in fact, he said Terry Preston would be a great name for him. Well, of course, Ferlin listened to Gene, and anything Gene said, he did, and so thank goodness we've got a Terry Preston Husky, our son.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned your kids were singing for Ferlin. Are any of them in the music business at all?
Well, they're in music, but as far as the business, we cut an album, which it never was released because Ferlin says he did a cameo on it and all that stuff. The kids and I and him, we did a whole album, and he said, and it was a great album, and he got a whole lot of. They wanted to release it, and he says, if that happens, then he says, I'll have to buy another damn bus. But mainly we wanted our kids to go through college, have a good education, and then if they wanted to get in the music business, great. I mean, it was, and all of them are real. They're in church with. In fact, our son Terry Preston now Amarillo is the choir director at a big church out there, and he stays in the music all the time. He does other shows and things, and like I said, the kids, they all sing. I guess they can't help it; they have to, and so do the grandkids.
Oh, that's great. Are you still performing, Marvis?
Oh, no. I quit when we were in Branson. I said, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I've been singing since 3 years old. Oh, good heavens. And I was ready to quit. I wanted to spend time with my grandbabies and my kids. And, of course, then I had to bounce back and forth between Branson and Nashville. Mm-hmm. And but I retired, but that didn't mean anything. If he had to do a show and he needed me, I'd be there. Of course, that's nice. I'll bring my wife. She don't need to be paid.
Oh, wow.
But that used to hurt my feelings, but I thought, no, that's not the way it should be.
Yeah, so. It sounds like he didn't mean it in that context either.
No, he always knew that he had me back there to help him if anything came up.
Well, Marvis, it's been a true honor being able to talk with you, and I've enjoyed this conversation, and I know my listeners will too. And I want to thank you for reaching out to us on Facebook, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to talk to you and get to know you a little bit, and I hope that sometime when you have more time you can come back and visit with us again. We'd love to have you anytime.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and again I say to all the Merle Haggard fans, that was one unique man, and so was my husband, Ferlin Husky. He was one unique man, and there's two precious entertainers that we lost. Amen
to that. Well, Marvis, we're going to play another one of Ferlin's songs right now, and I have kind of a tradition with my interviews. I let the interviewee go ahead and pick the next song that we're going to play, so that's up to you. What would you like us to play?
Oh, my gosh, you got them at hand there? Okay.
Put me on the spot.
I tell you what, if you can find it, Just For You.
All right, you got it.
That's the album it's in.
All right, we're going to play that, and we'll dedicate that just for you, Marvis. Thank you so much for being on My Kind of Country.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.